Hello guys, welcome to the machine learning mindset. In this tutorial I'm going to talk about a very important debugging approach in Python which you may find useful in almost any experiments that you're doing. Let's go to the Google Colaboratory, open a new Python 3 file and just get started. This approach is called try and except. So let's just get started and continue. Here, assuming we want to do something in Python, let's print x. So we don't have any kind of x here, so we're assuming we get an error. So it needs the kernel to be restarted, yes. So name x is not defined. What if we want to continue some kind of operation, even if in a specific part of the program something extraordinary happened? Like we have non-elements, but we just want to ignore the few exception handlings, and we want to continue our loop to be happening, and blah blah. So the method is called try and except. The start is try. Let's do the same thing. Try print x except an error happened. So, and let's just I'm sorry, just made a mistake. So let's just do except like this. You can directly use the error in front of the except. Now, as you can see, nothing is happening because when we say except, sorry again, I have to print it. Then print x is not correct, and an error happens in the inside of the try. The except is running whatever we have in the except, which is printing an error happened. So it is very useful, as I mentioned, in many different scenarios that you really don't want to stop the situation. And this is as simple as that. You can try something. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't occur, and if there is any kind of error, you just print the exception to have a track. Let's just make a change here. What we have here is that after try and except, we can have something called finally, which finally will be executed regardless of what is inside try and except, which means it just tries something. If it's kind of an error, it goes to the except. If not, it just print x, and finally print the check is done. See? So regardless of the situation, it just print that thing. Let me just change these things to just put x equal to 1. Now we're expecting that print x doesn't shoot any error, so we don't go inside except. See, this is printing x. There is no going inside except, and finally we have something down there, which is printing the check is done. So we can have different kind of basically checking here, but try and except is a kind of very useful I call it approach that we always use for technically debugging, as we don't want to be bothered by casual errors or problems in the data, as I mentioned. So one of the other useful approaches here we can call exceptions. So instead of using try and error, we can simply use exceptions. For example, let's have a list, call it my list, which consists of numbers and just one string. Here, call it hi. But we do only want to print numbers, and we want to check if anything in this list is not a number. We want to have an error. So we want to know what kind of error is that. The exception is to just handle the errors in a way that only by default we don't know what the kind of error is that, and we are going to raise an exception for that. So here we want to check if there is any string in this list as 4 item in my list, if remember how we just changed that, if type of item equals to str, we need to have an exception. So exception is like this. We use raise as is like exception. So here we use raise exception, and inside the exception we shoot the error manually, like no string is allowed in the list. So this is basically a sanity check to make sure that all the elements are correct. Let's just run that. So you see, I'm sorry, I just misspelled type. Now when I run it, it just doesn't say anything, but I was expecting that to raise an exception here. Let's just debug it. We are going to print type items, and we have str, and if type item equals to str, it should give an error. So here's the thing, it becomes interesting. And again, if type item is str, I'm going to debug it, so I'm just sharing my thoughts with you. Make sure if you get to the same situation, you have the same. Oh yes, here's the problem. So here I cannot use the str inside of this specific elements. I have to use str like this to make sure for checking the types. Now see, it raised an exception with saying no string is allowed. So this is a correct way of checking with if type an item equals to str, we just check it. We can have it in a dirty way as well, like I could have done the str like that, but could have put it like this or high or whatever, because type of this is technically type of the item that we're looking for. But the best way is to use the str. I made a mistake here, so my apologies. Yeah, you can simply use str of or changing of that, you can use int. Let's just print. It says yes, no string is allowed or no int is allowed here. See, the exception is happening and it just shoots you an error. Using raise an exception and throwing an except are the very important, powerful tools that you will find useful many times. So make sure that you check the description below for more resources, and feel free to ask questions if you had. I will be happy to answer and address them all. Thank you so much for watching. See you later.